Behind the Doors of Faith, a novel by Dr. Prince Nduka Alum, Chapter 1. I was 15 years old when my father suddenly decided against my will to force me into marriage with a man 3 times my age. I returned from school that fateful afternoon, and my mother hurriedly dragged me into her room as if I had committed some horrible crime that we could only discuss in her secret chambers. The look in her eyes made me tremble with fear, but I was sure I had done nothing wrong, at least not to my knowledge. Adaeze, your father is planning to give you out in marriage this week, she whispered with utmost bitterness. The palpable anger in her tone made me sick. The high expectations and enthusiasm which had engulfed her entire being since I got admitted into secondary school seemed to have vanished. She wanted me to feel a large void in her life at all costs, but she could not compose herself enough to break it down into spoken words. She sat me down on her wooden bed and soliloquized about how nature had not been kind to her. In her words, what she feared was about to happen before her eyes. The vicious circle of giving up girls in marriage because of poverty seemed to have become a family curse about to hit its third generation. She recalled the tale of her mother who could not go to school and how her father believed the missionaries had come to their village to defile the land. More so, that built the mission school on a land crookedly carved out from the evil forest against the will of the then chief priest who had cursed anyone who stepped on that forest. She recounted how her mother ended up betrothed in marriage at 12 to a man who already had 3 wives and grown-up kids older than her. He was a peasant farmer. He allotted a parcel of land each year to all his wives to grow their crops with their female children, while the boys worked with their fathers until they became old enough to manage their land. She said that her mother started bearing children at age 14 and ended up breeding a farm workforce of 4 boys and 3 girls, including my mother. Growing up, she said, wasn't fun in a house with many children and a father who played Lord over his wives and children. Papa was that man who you must obey, she said. It was not until she was 10 that she got some elementary school education, and her mother's friend Ojugo, who was married to the district officer's cook, needed a maidservant. She was surprised her father, who often boasted that none of his children would ever be a servant to the white man, decided with a bit of persuasion to allow her to go. Their daughter, the same age as her, spoke the Queen's English. At least, it sounded so to the unknowing like her, who said no word of English. She could not go to school, and each time she attempted to raise the issue, Ojugo reminded her that she'd promised her father not to let her get involved with anything that had to do with the activities in the evil forest. They were Christians, but she could not attend church service with them for a long time, though she took part in their morning devotions and midnight prayers. She soon became friends with their daughter, Promise, who became her private tutor. Promise constantly made fun of her ignorance, but she was determined to learn and never allowed her abuses to affect her mood. She often repeated every English word out of Promise's mouth, though she didn't know what they meant. As she watched her get dressed in the morning and zoom off to school, she narrated how she would spend the rest of the day, imagining what might become of her if the Abara of the evil forest visited them and liberated her occupied territory. Now, see where all these have landed me. Mama recalled that her friend Promise married a senior civil servants man who took her to Enugu Township. Promise also got a good paying job at the secretariat where she worked as a secretary to the Commissioner for Education. If her parents had allowed her to attend school, my mother believed she too could have attained the same standard Auntie Promise achieved and would never have ended up in my father's house. My mother burst out crying, and I couldn't help but join in the crying party. I sat there confused, not knowing what to say, and unwilling to be part of this horrible decision my father was about to take or had already taken. We sat in silence and wept for over an hour. Mamo told me, how her mother had begged her friend Ojugo to take her as a maid, hoping to send her to school eventually. She had kept the secret to herself, and even when she finally started sneaking into school, she struggled to keep the secret for as long as possible. Her father ensured that all the male children worked with him on the farm, apart from her older brother Ikenna, whom he sent to Onisha with one of her uncles to do an apprenticeship as a trader. Mamo, as we fondly called her, once again confided in me that she had pleaded with this uncle to allow Ikenna to attend adult night school in exchange and as a part of his final settlement. Who would console the other? Mamo and I sat there in silence, gazing into the emptiness that reigned inside the room. I was confused and lost in thoughts of what to do next. I boldly told my mother that I would run into the evil forest, that they were my last resort to escape the oncoming humiliation my father was planning. Mamo, I murmured in despair. I don't even know the man, and will become a slave disguised as a wife? She placed her hand over my shoulder and sternly said, Adaeze, I sincerely don't want you or any of my children to fall victim to the crazy pattern that seems to have overtaken my lineage. I vow to liberate the next generations from this pattern, and I mean every bit. She held me close and whispered into my ears, Adaeze, I wish I could do something positive about this, but your father can be furiously uncontrollable in matters like this. He might disown you if you oppose his decision. I pushed her off and stared into her eyes. Mamo, I shouted, are you part of this evil plan? Are you trying to sell the idea to me to please your husband? She denied having any prior knowledge of the marriage arrangement. When your father mentioned it, I washed my hands. I don't know how I fell asleep that night, but I remember vividly not eating dinner. When heavy pounds on my door woke me up, I realized I had bolted the door from inside, locking my sister out of our room. I had already decided not to go to school, but it was only then that I realized it was a Saturday. I sluggishly opened the door to find my father standing before me. He handed me 2 Adire materials and said I should take them to a tailor and have her make 2 lovely clothes for me. We will have an August visitor in the next few days, and I want you to look like a princess. I had this strong desire to reject the clothes or ask why I should be the only one dressing up for this all-important visitor. But as usual, his intimidating order overwhelmed me. Many of my friends in school will scorn me to death if they heard what was about to happen to me. No one, not even Mamo, ever dared to challenge his authority. For the first time, I wished I hadn't been born into this misery, where every hope for a greater tomorrow was disobedience. I went to school on Monday looking distressed and too ashamed to tell anyone what I was going through. I thought of reporting the matter to the priest, but my father had no regard for him as he always referred to him as an efulefu, a hopeless idiot, who at his age had neither a wife nor children he could call his own. My mother thought of reporting the matter to Ojugo. She promptly remembered how her father had rained abuses on the family for betraying his trust and allowing her to attend that infested evil forest school where they taught girls to disobey their parents and their husbands in the name of equal opportunity. I imagined she wouldn't want to face another abuse from a man of my father's low caliber. On Sunday evening, I overheard my father speaking to his brother about this business executive who will soon become his son-in-law. The man, he boasted, lives in Lagos. I will take my daughter Adaeze with him as soon as he pays the bride price and monetizes the general wine carrying. Do you mean by monetizing the general wine carrying? My uncle questioned. Are you the only one in this village who needs money? Why would you monetize her wine carrying and deny the Umunna the right over their daughter? He paused, cleared his throat, and continued. If this is your plan, please don't invite me, and these your presumed in-laws come. I don't intend to be part of this sacrilege. My uncle stood up and left abruptly, leaving my father sitting in that position for about an hour without saying a word. That same night, I had a dream. In that dream, someone trapped me in a pit, and nobody heard me. No matter how hard he shouted, I woke up and thanked God that it was a nightmare. I recounted this nightmare to my mother as I woke up in the morning, and she sighed and started crying again, as if she felt helpless before an impending danger. She asked me to kneel beside her as she prayed fervently against every evil arrow fashioned against her and her children. In strong words, she petitioned God, demanding Him to break every chain of bondage that had risen to fasten us onto a past against which she had continually prayed. After the prayers, I told my mother that I planned to go to the secretariat in Abakaliki to visit her friend, Auntie Promise, in her new office at Abakaliki, where they transferred her and her husband. I told her I wanted to plead with her to help me out of this impending mess. Auntie Promise had often been so generous to her family. She brought assorted gifts for us, including my parents. Each time she visited, in appreciation for her generosity, Mama gifted her with small local food items she loved. She remained silent for a few minutes, as if she wasn't sure I was about to do the right thing. Adaeze, my daughter, I would not like to make matters worse because the situation profoundly pains me. A father can start a fight with all of us over this matter. Wait first, let us understand where he's heading. She said that once my father beats the drum, we can decipher the proper dance steps to the music. Mamo, I interrupted. These idiomatic expressions are often deceitful and never express a yes or no. It's like string on the fence, willing to fall on either side. I'll be in Auntie Promise's office tomorrow. Whatever comes out of it is okay. I hope she will have the courage to offer any form of help. I'm okay with becoming her house help or anything at all rather than ending up in this dark hole. The following day, I dressed up in my usual school uniform. I pulled out all the money I had kept in my metal savings box to make up for my transport money from our village, Ezambo, to Abakaliki, about 20 kilometers away. My younger sister Neka was distraught. When I woke up early that morning and told her my plans, we both wept, knowing she might be next on Papa's drawing board. Congratulations, Adaeze, my father said as I opened the door and exited my room. I'd been up since 4 o'clock in the morning and was wondering why the spirits of our forefathers woke me up. I sat on my bed for a while, he said, and then came out and sat on my armchair as if expecting a visitor. Lo and behold, I heard you conspiring with your sister to invite a strange woman into my family matters. I listened attentively to understand if your mother was part of this evil plan to make me a public disgrace. She needs to thank her stars that I did not hear you mention her name during that stupid discussion. I would have walked her to her father's house this morning with a keg of fresh palm wine on her head. Confused, I borrowed courage from who knows where and took the bold steps towards the entrance door with my school bag tightly under my arms. My father rose like a giant, held my hand and took away my school bag. He pulled out his notebook, twisted it open, used his index finger to sniff twice in both nostrils. Then he closed it back and snapped it with his thumb while looking at me like an angry lion. Adaeze, your plans to disgrace me before my intending in-laws and my enemies will not work if I'm alive. He yelled my mother's name and ordered her to come right away. I couldn't tell if my mother walked or ran to the scene, but she stood before my father within seconds. Sit down, both of you, he ordered. The fury in his breath needed no further interpretation. He took a deep breath before asking me to hold my ears with my hands and listen carefully. Here in Izambo, we have a tradition of keeping our word at all costs. When my grandfather boasted that he would never pay taxes to the white man, he went the extra mile to cut off the tax collector's head. To prove his point, he cut the man's head off and took it to display in the market square. He also proudly vowed to do the same should those who come to collect the annual rate show up with their ugly heads. Exactly 3 months later, he kept his promise. He looked at me from head to toe with visible disdain, then turned to look at my mother in an even more scary manner. We're honorable men because our words are our bonds. From today, you will not return to that useless school again, where they teach you to disobey your parents without even trying to understand why they take specific actions. Do you hear me, Adaeze? If you know what is good for you, try to understand me and ask me questions. If there are things you don't understand, instead of running from pillar to post like a sheep without a shepherd. My mother didn't utter a word, and I felt betrayed. Somehow, I will later understand her position, and I feel pity for her rather than anger. Tomorrow, My father continued, my prospective in-laws will visit us. I want all of you to realize that my plans for you are not as evil as you imagine. I might sound as if I'm doing it to punish you, but far be it from me. I know what I'm doing, and it is in the best interest of all of us to make it a success. Have I made myself clear? From that moment onwards, I became a prisoner in my room under my father's custody. He ordered Mamo and my sister to retrieve my newly sewn dress from the tailor. He also gave them money to buy kola nuts, which she would use to welcome his in-laws the following day. My brothers watched the curtain blinds while I scrubbed the sitting room on the duress. We're all to present ourselves at our best to the unknown visitors on what I later nicknamed D-Day. My father seemed in high spirits, convinced he knew what he was doing. Later that evening, my mother sneaked into my room to work on my mindset. She started by reaffirming her total disagreement with this unholy marriage. She tried to convince me that marriage is supposed to be a long-term learning process in which two people work out a common goal, interest, and symbiotic existence. What we have experienced so far in this part of the world is a master-servant relationship where the wife's opinion is neither sought nor taken into consideration, even when her ideas seem more beneficial to the family. As for you, my daughter, this is not my dream and desire for you. I've been praying in the best way I can to ensure that tomorrow doesn't come at all. But either my prayers have fallen on deaf ears or your father has paid the devil to ensure we remain in this obscure circle of doom. We woke up early in the morning to prepare for visitors coming from Onisha. Papa wasn't sure how many people were coming but wanted to be ready. We cooked enough food for about 15 people. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when they finally arrived in two flashy SUVs. There were 7 of them. 5 were young men, including the presumed groom, and 2 young ladies who looked more like girlfriends than wives. As required by tradition, my father sent my brother out to call our immediate uncles to come and hear what our visitors had to say. In the meantime, he asked me to take the packs of geese they brought to his room, leaving only the drinks and kola nuts in one corner of a sitting room. Once a good number of our relatives had gathered, my father presented kola nuts to them as a symbol of hospitality, as demanded by our culture. He also offered them some drinks to wash down the kola nuts before finally giving our visitors an audience to present their kola nuts, wine, and the purpose of their visit. One spoke on their behalf and introduced them one after the other, using bogus titles and nicknames, as was the tradition with the Anambra people. Most of them were managing directors and CEOs. As he claimed, he used the titles Lolo and Dr. Mrs. for the leaders. When he finished with the long introduction, he presented the drinks they came with without mentioning why they had come, as was the norm in Igbo land. When he finally sat down after the long talks, my father excitedly welcomed them and asked my mother to serve them food since they had come from the faraway city of Lagos. We hurriedly served the food. I noticed that while everyone, including my father, ate enthusiastically, my uncle, my father's older brother, didn't eat or drink. I also observed that my father was not comfortable with his silence. When they finished eating, my uncle stood up and straightforwardly welcomed them. I presume you have not come to witness our Yom festival because this is not the season. I would also suppose that our masquerade is not in season as we are presently at the peak of our planting season, which explains why you met us in reduced numbers. I would appreciate it if you would be kind enough to let the cat out of the sack. Their spokesperson again took the floor and greeted them with a threefold Ibukwenu. He introduced the bridegroom and said, my elders, my brother asked us to accompany him to this faraway land in search of a damsel that will join him in Lagos to enjoy the massive wealth he has acquired. In other words, he is searching for an Uriako who will eat his wealth. He paused to observe if my poor uncles were ruling over themselves to sell me out to this young billionaire. My elders, I was made to understand that the damsel we are looking for is said to be living in this house. We're not ignorant of the traditions that come with concluding issues of this magnitude. Still, it is almost impossible because we are all busy people coming from faraway Lagos to follow up with the little things. If my elders here agree, We would like to monetize every possible tradition immediately and cut away the damsel to Lagos today. He looked at his colleagues and asked, "My chiefs and lawless, have I spoken your mind?" "Yes, you have," they chorused. While he was still standing, my uncle asked if the groom's parents had died while he was still an infant. He didn't wait for an answer before he threw another question. "I also want to know if all the elders in your clan suddenly got arrested yesterday by the police." Hearing these offensive words from my sage uncle, I felt shockwaves, but I remained confident that he must have had a reason for using such harsh words. There was an uncanny silence. I could tell that my father felt betrayed by his brother. I was almost sure he would do something precipitately stupid to save his face and the gifts they brought for him. My uncle took the floor once again, went straight to the point. "My brothers and sisters," he said, "it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the glorious land of Ezambu. But if men must remain men, and tradition something to behold, we must do things in a way that will not bring a curse to our land. Your speech compels me to agree that you are all busy men, just like city people love to claim. You have not bothered to know how busy we are too, or to ask what it takes for a man to abandon his farm work to come and sit around for a bottle of beer or food he has abundantly in stock on his farm." He turned to face the presumed bridegroom and said, "Your people and our people need to know each other. We would like to know your roots by sending our emissary to investigate your family, and in the same manner, we would wish you to do so for yourself." He first looked maliciously at his brother and continued his speech. "My people, there is another recommendation that I must make. When you return this time, please come with your parents and some elders from your clan." He paused again, as if he would take questions for clarification, but no one uttered a word. He looked at my father again, this time from head to toe, without opening his mouth. "My gray hair in this case suggests I take my leave right now. I expect you to return to your drawing board if you are genuinely interested in asking for our daughter's hand in marriage." At that juncture, my uncle bent over, picked up his walking stick, turned towards my father and said calmly, "Papa Adaeze, you are dancing the unheard music of the gods with two legs. Unfortunately, only you hear the drummers and those applauding you despite your dancing out of tune. Soon," he continued, "you might be jumping over fences of malignant spirits into unseen pits. May I not be a witness to this?" he concluded. He snapped his fingers and muttered, "Tofiakwa, God forbid," as he headed towards the door. I sighed in relief when my uncle walked out on our presumed in-laws. Although my father was brave enough to make decisions in his household, I was old enough to know that he could not single-handedly give me away to these unknown men without a consensus from his immediate family. Shortly before their arrival, my father had convened an emergency family meeting, not to discuss anything but to communicate his decisions or intentions. Our in-law is very busy. I might not have enough time to follow the usually repeated visits in our traditions. However, he's agreed to do everything from A to Z today and take his wife along. It made me understand that after the initial introduction, they will return to their car, bring more drinks, and pay the bride price immediately. This abysmal proposal shocked Mamo, and she tried to question my father's point of view. Her first daughter of all people is being given away on the first visit to a man she doesn't know. If I may ask, Papa Adaeze, do you know this man? Do you know his father, mother, or any of his clansmen? I understand your point of view, Mama Adaeze, but I would rather not blame you because you don't understand the power of money. She would no longer need all these old clothes because her husband promised to take her shopping once they return to Lagos. On a second note, he promised to put her back to school in one of the best secondary schools in Lagos. This is not all, my people. My friend, who connected us to these international business magnates, told me he is one of Lagos' most prominent Igbo youths. As part of the marriage pact, I intend to ask him to take two of your brothers along with you so that they can serve him and learn his trade. My immediate younger brother, Clement, jumped at this apparent luminary, ingenious idea of selling me into marriage at this early age of my life. He keyed into the stupid idea my father was relishing. I was as cold as a stone, dumbfounded over the idea of having to leave for an unknown destination with a total stranger, but it seemed fate had caught up with me, and the impending doom was inevitable. I tried very hard to pray or to wish away this nightmare, but the harder I tried, the more helpless I felt. Mamo repeatedly looked at me with compassion. My daughter Adaeze, I'm compelled to swallow my anger and humanity, or put all of us at a breaking point with your father, who constantly proves to everyone that he is the man who must be obeyed. A few minutes after his brother worked out on our visitors, other relatives felt their continued stay was contrary to every good sense of reasoning. They got up one after the other and took their leave. My father reclined towards his presumed son in law and boldly questioned why his parents or elderly delegates didn't accompany them for a momentous occasion like this. I strained my ears to hear what flimsy excuses he would give over the apparent blunder they had just committed. He kept mute for a while, then he mumbled some words to my father, as if surprised at my uncle's reaction and their apparent rudeness. At least he should not have walked out on us. They seemed to disagree as my father expressed dissatisfaction at his poor judgment. I didn't hear his explanations, but what matters most is that my uncle, in his infinite wisdom, succeeded in nullifying today's event. As you can see, I played my part to the letter, to the point of quarreling with my entire family to ensure everything went as planned. I can assure you that my brother's consent is indispensable in his capacity as the elder and father of this family. But as our people say, Anobala ta, echibunta. If the hunter misses the antelope today, tomorrow is another hunting day. My father saw them off to their car and talked with his presumed in-law, Mr. Eddie Best, as his friends call him. They seemed engaged in some cordial discourse while others waited in the car. My father patted him on the back to congratulate him for something he had said or proposed, and wished they ended up in an altercation that would have spelt an end to this horse trading tagged marriage, but my wishes were not horses, and I, like the beggars, couldn't ride. My father called out for my younger brother Clement, and he ran to answer. The mere idea of going to Lagos to learn a trade elated him. 5 minutes later, he returned with a big Ghana must-go bag, which he took straight to Papa's room. Then he ran to his room, picked up a few personal belongings, and stuffed them into a bako bag. He ran to the kitchen where Mama was busy cooking with firewood, and I ran after him to hear what he had to say. Mamo, I'm going to Onitsha with Uncle Eddie Best. He promised to put me on the first bus to Lagos tomorrow to meet his manager. Who made him your uncle, if I may ask? Or are you carried away by the mention of the name Lagos? What game are you and Papa playing exactly? Sister, don't worry yourself. Mr. Eddie told Papa they will return for you over the weekend. I'm going to test the ground in anticipation of your arrival. As it stands, sister, I'll be your forerunner, just like John the Baptist did for Jesus Christ. I looked at him with disdain, but for him, it was like pouring holy water on rocks. Before I could say Jack, Clement, my younger brother, zoomed off to the car and jumped in as if a lion was coming after him. Mr. Eddie won down the glass by the driver's side and handed my father a pack of 500 naira notes. Papa didn't even care to look at them as he hurriedly stashed them into his pockets before the man changed his mind. Papa waved his hands at them as the SUV zoomed off and continued waving with both hands until the car vanished from the wavelength of his visibility. He walked in slowly with his hand inside the pocket where he had stuffed the bundle of naira notes received from Mr. Eddie, as if he was afraid they might disappear. As I watched him, I silently prayed for a miraculous sign, the kind that could cause the sudden disappearance of that ill-gotten money, but it didn't come to pass. He whistled his way into his bedroom, where he went to hide the money. Then he came out, sat on his armchair, and ordered me to open the Ghana must-go bag my brother had brought him before disappearing with his new unknown Uncle Eddie. The gifts included 4 Hollandaise materials, 3 lace and brocade materials, and assorted hot drinks. The Hollandaise is for you and your mother. You can also take 1 piece of lace and brocade material and keep the rest in my room. I will keep 2 hot drinks for my brother because one person does not, by tradition, consume everything brought by his in-laws. Mamo asked me to choose first, but I vehemently told them I did not want those items. I'm not part of the drama playing out in this house. I used to hear people say poverty is a curse, but I didn't know it could trickle down to this level. My father laughed profusely over my refusal to choose first, as my mother demanded. He decided to apply his persuasive skills, as he said in a very unusual voice, Adaeze, my pride, please take both of them and let your mother take another one from the bag. Papa, I'm getting sold out to a stranger against my will. Shut your mouth, Adaeze, before I shut it off for you with a dirty slap. As I said earlier, Papa, I'm not part of this drama, period. As I left the scene in utmost despair, I muttered, let heaven be my witness. I returned to my room and bitterly wept until I fell asleep, with a pillow over my head. It was the longest night of my life, but when I looked out the window, it was still dark, and I realized the first cock had not even crowed. I was sweating profusely from what seemed to have been a terrible nightmare. I found myself in a thick, dark forest, full of snakes. As I attempted to run for safety, I fell into a pit full of skeletons. I struggled to escape the hole, but the walls were slimy and slippery. I started screaming as hard as I could, but no help seemed to be on the way. Finally, I heard my sister calling my name and banging on the door. It was only then that I realized that I had shouted out so loud in the dream that it became audible in the physical. My father spent the rest of the week being nice to everyone who cared to stand on his side. The face of his elder brother was difficult to sort. He had sent my elder brother to take one bottle of a hot drink gift he got from Mr. Eddie Best to my uncle, who vehemently rejected it and returned it to him without comment. He called my mother and ordered her to talk to me privately to teach me how to be submissive to my husband. It was the only part of the scriptures he understood and appreciated. I would often quote it to my mother whenever it seemed convenient. His master-servant approach was too pronounced to be described as selfish because he was self-centered in absolute terms and did nothing to conceal it. Was often quick to use the magic word, I would disown you if you do this or that. But now that I think of it, I wish he could disown me immediately because anywhere is better than where I find myself.